Okay. Right, well, thank you everybody for coming this evening. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We've got apologies from Councillor Paul Clark.
And I understand that Councillor Campbell may be late. So thank you for that. Moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Councillor Brooks. Does anyone wish to comment on the accuracy of the minutes? Okay. Are you all agreed that I may sign the minutes as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3. Do we have any declarations of interest from members? Yes, Councillor Emery.
Agenda item 5. I'm the HDC ward councillor for Holbrook West, and Holbrook West, part of Holbrook West is part of the area that's being considered as part of the operational area.
Right, I believe that whilst you are affected by it, you're affected no more than no less than anybody else that lives in the area.
In fact, my own residence isn't within the unparished area, so
Okay,
I'd be less affected.
Councillor Boffey?
I live in the unparished area. I'm a ward councillor for one of the wards in the unparished area, but I don't think I'm more affected than anybody else.
No, I believe that's true. Thank you. Okay, item 4. This is the announcements. I have one announcement. Given the government's white paper on English devolution, I understand that Councillor Boffey, as leader, will be asking myself as the chair of Governance Committee to work with the monitoring officer and the Democratic Services and Elections Manager to explore the resource requirements to deliver a community governance review for the whole district sooner rather than later. This is on a background of that the last review began in 2012, and there is statutory guidance that states that the best practice is to conduct a review every 10 to 15 years. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5, Community Governance Review, Horsham Town. We're joined by Aisha Nottage, Democratic Services and Elections Manager, who will now introduce this report. Thank you.
On the 10th of December 2024, Horsham District Council received a community governance application from the Horsham Blueprint Business Neighbourhood Forum to conduct a community governance review with a view to creating a parish in the unparished area. The application requested that this parish would have a parish council, which would be called Horsham Town Council, and they proposed that the town council would encompass the entire unparished area. The law requires that upon receipt of a valid application, the review must be completed within 12 months. The purpose of this meeting is to agree the terms of reference, which are set out in Appendix 1, so that the review process and timescales are agreed. Appendix 1 contains the proposed terms of reference for the review. I will, however, highlight that the consultation period for the other interested parties, which would, for example, be West Sussex County Council and the neighbourhood councils, is scheduled for January-February 2025, but this should have been detailed as May-June to be in line with the consultation of local electors. The committee are asked to approve these terms of reference, which includes the approach to consultation and the timescales, and this would be subject to the provision of the appropriate budget in the 2025-26 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Before we move to the discussion of the item, as Aisha stated, it's suggested that the terms of reference be amended so that consultation with other interested bodies should take place in May-June 2025. As such, with the meeting's consent, I propose the recommendation 2 on page 7 of the agenda be altered so that it reads, to approve the terms of reference for the Community Governance Review as set out in Appendix 1, with an amendment to the timescale for the consultation of other interested bodies to take place in May-June 2025. I also propose that we include an additional recommendation that would read, to delegate authority to the Democratic Service and Elections Manager to undertake all work that is required to give effect to the recommendations contained within this report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Bevis? Are you all agreed?
Agreed.
Chairman, can we have a discussion of that before we agree the recommendations?
Absolutely. Are you happy with the recommendations, or do you want them discussed first?
Can we discuss them first?
Okay.
If it's okay, we'll discuss them first.
Yes, do you want to raise any questions you have?
I've got a couple
Sorry, Councillor Vickers, would you use your microphone?
It is on, I don't think it's working.
As it's a public meeting, people need to hear you. Thank you.
I won't repeat myself, I think you all heard it. So I've got a couple of questions about what the differences are now in how this is going to be done and how we're going to consult. I've got a few questions. First of all, my main concern is about how we actually communicate with the residents of Horsham Town. I know that we're going to have some public meetings. I know we're going to send out leaflets to all residents. And then also I want to know how we're going to get the feedback that we need and how that's going to be collated and used to form a final decision on taking this forward. Back in 1995, I believe we had a postal referendum, and I understand 60% weren't in favour at that time of a town council, and the turnout was about 40%. I see in the notes that a referendum is not the final solution to this, but I would prefer that that was to happen going forward. I've also got a couple of questions about set-up costs. How much would it cost us as a district council to set up a town council? Will we, the Horsham Council, lose the town charge that we currently get from residents in Horsham? What functions will be transferred from us to the town council? And would there be need for extra staffing levels for the town council, including the clerk? How many councillors, you might not be able to answer all these, I'm sorry, how many?
First five. Should we take the first five?
Yeah.
I should respond to then.
Okay,
Do you think?
yeah, I've got a few, just two or three.
No, I think that's a very good idea. If I can take the first five and then we'll carry on. Okay.
Thank you.
So in terms of the consultation method, so the reason that we weren't looking at a referendum, you'll see in the papers, I've looked at an indicative cost of it would be called a local advisory poll, which is different legislation than was in place in 1995. That legislation came in later on, so it'd be under different rules. The cost of running that would be 31,000 approximately, with the cost shared between the county and with us, because the elections would be on the same day. The reason we were looking at doing a questionnaire is that it would then mean that we can get a bit more of an understanding from the public when the governance committee reconvene to look at what the public think. It gives us that qualitative data of, you know, if people have said they're not sure, you know, it doesn't give them a yes or no. They can say yes, no, or unsure. There could be lots of different questions, so it would help the governance committee to form kind of what the different options could be in the town. And it would give people a chance to say why, so that perhaps some of the concerns could be addressed in any recommendations that the governance committee might make.
My concern is getting people to actually participate in answering a questionnaire, whereas a ballot of some sort in a referendum is more likely to get people to express an opinion. Now, you may say they might not understand what they're voting for because they haven't seen any of the leaflets or they haven't been to any of the public meetings, but my personal view is that it's more democratic to have a postal ballot, which doesn't necessarily involve the same expense as holding it on the same day as a local election.
I can have a look at that, but the postal costs are extortionate, and actually sending postal votes even to the 20% of the electorate makes up such a large portion of the cost, even versus having staff in polling stations.
Okay, thank you for that.
Right, was that the first question? Oh, sorry.
If you don't mind, Councillor Vickers, I'll just one at a time. I might pick up on points. Is that all right? Or do you want me to wait till later?
I'm happy for you to.
Okay.
It's up
So-
to the chairman.
I would just Belinda.
I think if we take it one at a time, that would be useful. Then we can have a debate on each one. Thank you.
Just as context, yes, there was a postal survey in 1995. So postal referendum. Turnout was 40%. There was another sample postal survey in 2001, I think, and again just over 40% responded. And by contrast, the neighbourhood forum only actually has the power to do this as a result of it having a referendum on its neighbourhood plan, and the turnout in that referendum was 14%. So I don't think the argument that a referendum increases the turnout versus something postal, actually a survey, actually necessarily holds weight. And also, if you're doing a postal survey, if it also includes in it the question, do you want a town council or not? What's the difference? But you actually get more information from the rest of the survey as well. And finally, I would just note that in terms of thinking about the postal costs, I was at school in 1995, but I seem to remember stamps in 1995 cost about 20p, and now you're probably looking at, what is it now? I lost count at about £1.20. So
I think
yeah,
for second class, it's still 85, and that's through a machine, isn't it?
yeah.
We also pay about 90 pence per envelope that's returned to us in response
Yeah.
to any postal vote.
Thanks.
Councillor Emery.
So if I can raise two other points in relation to this. Firstly, I was reading with interest the devolution paper this afternoon. You can see what an enjoyable afternoon I was having. And in that, it actually states that the government is reconsidering whether it will even hold the county elections in May. So we may not even get an election in May upon which we could put this question to the public at the same time. The second point I raised, which is pretty interesting, is I noticed that under proposals we're actually going to ask the public twice. We're going to consult with the public twice. So presumably one, in order for us to sort of get qualitative data upon which we can then refine our requirements, and then the second time in which we can then take those to the public on further consultation, which I think a two-step process is far more democratic and enables the public to be far more engaged than just a simple vote, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Yes, just very briefly to concur that I in no way consider it less democratic to give people a greater breadth of opportunity to engage, having more qualitative data on which to make our decisions, having a greater scope and more flexibility in response, I think is an increase of democracy rather than a diminution of it. And as point 5.2 in the report reflects, a binary response is a rather crude tool by which to undertake something as important as this. And I think that the benefits far outweigh any even possible, though I think they're quite unlikely here from what others have said, any uplift in engagement. And that's, that's very speculative at best, that it might engage more people. I honestly don't think that it would. Thank you.
Can I just come back on that, please?
Yes, Councillor Brooks.
What's the difference between the cost of a ballot against a free envelope return of a survey? What's the difference?
So as in a fully postal referendum,
Yes.
I can work that out if you give me a couple of minutes while you're debating other things, but the
Right.
intention wasn't that we're posting a survey for people to post back to us and incur those costs. The intention would be that it would be an online survey with paper copies available in the town for people to complete, or they can write a letter and make any sort of representation they want or email us.
So
we're not posting a physical
we're not
multiple page
posting any
survey.
surveys to anybody,
It'll be a leaflet that gets delivered with information about how to complete the survey.
hand delivered, not posted.
Hand delivered by casual staff to make the cost savings.
Okay, we're joined by Councillor Campbell. Thank you very much for attending.
Apologies for being late.
That's fine. Just to let you know that we are just looking at some amended recommendations, which you won't be aware of now. But just to summarise, Councillor Vickers had a few questions, and we're going through them one by one. The first one was about having a referendum versus having a survey. Okay, shall we move on to, anybody else got any comments about question 1? Okay, so we'll move on to your question 2.
Okay, so I think your next questions were kind of straying outside of what we're looking at here. So the main purpose of this meeting is to set out the terms of reference, and this kickstarts the consultation and the process for the draft recommendations to be made. So the setup costs to Horsham District Council, we wouldn't necessarily know at this stage. Ultimately, if a town council was established, then the neighbourhood councils would cease to exist, and therefore there would no longer be a special charge, which would be replaced by a parish precept. What functions would be transferred would be negotiated once the council was established. That has to be with agreement between the new council and Horsham District Council.
Am I right in thinking then we don't get the town charge, but they charge a precept, they get a precept, is that right? So we lose the town charge to the district council, but the town council can set its own precept, which isn't capped, so they can set it at any level they like.
So for the first year, it would likely be set by the district council, and then once the town councillors are elected, then yes, it would fall into the normal regime of how parish councils operate in setting their precept.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that? Can we open the discussion, Councillor Roffey?
I just, if it's okay, I just wanted to make a minor clarification there, because it sometimes gets confused between the neighbourhood councils and the special charge. We don't have a special charge because we have neighbourhood councils. We have a special charge because we have an unparished area. The neighbourhood, so the two things, one doesn't necessarily follow the other. So just because we no longer had neighbourhood councils wouldn't mean we wouldn't have a special charge. The reason we wouldn't have a special charge anymore is because the area would be parished and would have its own parish council, also known as a town council. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make a comment or question on that? Okay. Question, have we done those?
I think
There was 5, we've done 2.
Oh, sorry, there was another one about extra staff, wasn't there?
Staffing costs, yes, going forward.
It would depend on the arrangements of any shadow council. That wouldn't be something we'd be necessarily looking at now, but the town council, if it was put in place, would be employing its own staff and paying for those staff out of their parish precept.
And how many councillors are likely to be on a town council? Does it vary?
You'll be discussing that so you'll do the initial consultation, and then when the governance committee meet to do their draft recommendations, it could contain any manner of things. It could look at warding arrangements, if it wanted to be warded, if you wanted, different numbers of councillors to different wards, or if it was one area and how many councillors there are. And there's different levels of recommended councillors depending on the electorate. So that would be for the governance committee to put out in their draft recommendations after the first consultation.
Thank you. So on the consultation part, what other organisations other than the neighbourhood councils and the West Sussex County Council would be consulted? Obviously residents, but that goes without saying.
It could be any other interested party. So we have a duty to notify West Sussex County Council and then other than that, any interested person or body could make a response, and it's going to be publicised. The bid could make a response. You could get the MP. It could be someone who works in the town who doesn't necessarily live here. They would count as an interested party, and as part of the questionnaire, we'd be looking to gather that data on in what position they're responding, so that we understand, residents think this and maybe businesses think
So businesses will be consulted.
We wouldn't necessarily specifically contact them, but the questionnaire will be open on the website for any interested party to respond to, and they can identify themselves as such.
I'm slightly concerned about how you actually get people to be interested on looking on the website, especially maybe the older members of our residents who maybe don't have continuous access to computers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one. I think with the businesses and whatnot, if you look at some of the other parish areas, I'm not sure they consult with their businesses directly. I'm sure if there's an item on the agenda, that the businesses will come in and make comments. And it would be the same here, the fact that we're actually opening up maybe to the bid, but it could be Blueprint, it could be anybody, friends of Horsham Hospital, friends of Museum. Councillor Buffy.
Just picking up on the point around how do we make, how will residents who don't normally use online information be aware that it will be happening? Well, that's why they will receive hand-delivered communications informing them that the consultation is happening, so that and then providing them where they can get access to the information. In terms of organisations, there will be numbers of them. I would imagine, Horsham Society springs to mind, or all sorts of other community organisations as well. In terms of contacting businesses, I think it would probably be unusual necessarily to have a directory to then contact all the individual businesses, but I would imagine that we could potentially solicit the assistance of the, as you said, the Business Improvement District, which covers a significant portion of the unparished area.
Would the people get assistance with filling out the questionnaires?
Yep, so I have an email address and a phone number and our physical office address for people to contact us if they need assistance.
And my next question is probably a bit premature. It's about what assets would be handed over to a town council. What responsibilities would they have to take on? For example, cemeteries, leisure centres, other things that we as a district council look after.
That would have to be negotiated when
That comes much later.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it wouldn't come before the town council is established. It would come after. If you made a recommendation to establish one, then those discussions would take place.
Councillor Campbell.
So the unparished area has got quite a lot of voters in it. Will there be any consideration for setting up maybe 2 councils rather than just one town council?
An interesting consideration.
I mean, it depends. The first stage is going to be an open questionnaire, and then what you as committee members decide to make as your draft recommendations as a result of the questionnaire responses. I would suggest you could look at that. You could look at warding it so that you've still got different areas of representation. It's open to. I would suggest you'd wait until the consultation responses come in to have a look at what you might want to do.
Councillor Buffy.
Can't remember what I was going to say.
Councillor Emery.
I'm sorry, have we completed your 5 questions? Sorry, I'm just...
I think we have. There's one more I've got, that's all. I've got one more about the consultation process, that's all. But
I'll come back to you in a minute.
thank you.
Can I just ask about the timetable? If we're now going to bring forward the governance, the reviews by the various bodies, so West Sussex County Council by a few months, will that enable us to go to full council earlier? I'm just concerned if we're not going to full council until December 2025, and I think the paper goes on to refer to this not being implemented until elections in May 2027, which with the devolution changes going forward proposed at a great rate of knots, I have some concerns about waiting for that length of time for us to implement that, if indeed we're in a situation where district council amendments and can council situation is going to change. So I'm just wondering if there's any way which we could do this any faster.
It's difficult to do it any faster, given that you need the time periods to consult and give the public adequate time to consult, data analysis, draft recommendations, consult again, data analysis, final recommendations. However, the April 2027, it could be April 2026. That would be in the final recommendations. So it could be that the governance committee recommend that full council were to do a reorganisation order with a view to the town council being set up in April 2026.
With elections to the council at that point,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Right, any other questions or comments? Councillor Boffey.
A couple of things just on that. I think we don't know yet is the answer, if it happened. I mean, I think you could look at having a shadow authority from April 2026. That doesn't necessarily mean your elections are going to be in May 2026, because you're probably not set up and ready to go then. I think you'd be looking at having a shadow authority from April 2026 with elections taking place in May 2027 in all likelihood, but the corporate being of the council would be in place from April 2026 for you to be able to get it up and running. I also just wanted to sort of comment on what I think was a valid question from Councillor Vickers about what transfers across to it. I don't think it's possible at this stage to know that, and it does have to be it would, if it happened, have to be negotiated later on. But I think as part of the consultation, it would probably be incumbent on us to share some hypotheticals or some matters of what might happen without being able to specifically say at the time. But I think otherwise it's difficult for you to have a conversation with the public about what it is you're actually talking about without actually giving some examples of what it would mean, with the caveat that would be subject to the negotiations and finalisations later on.
Okay. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. John, I'm feeling I might be missing something. Are we still talking about the report, or are we now talking about the terms of reference? Because the timing was terms of reference as far as I can see.
Well, I started off with my recommendations and the changes to the recommendations, and we've kind of got swept off into the terms of reference. I'm happy to merge the two because I think they're relevant and appropriate. So yeah, it's a bit of a mismatch at the moment. I do apologise.
In which case, I do have one question about the terms of reference, if
That's
I may,
fine.
or I can wait for later for Councillor Vickers to get her.
Yeah,
Number
let's finish
6
with
in.
Councillor Vickers and then we'll come back to you in the nicest possible way. Sorry.
My final question, what level of response would be seen as adequate to be a positive outcome?
Don't know.
If only
What
I'm suggesting is, it's possible, say only 10-20% of people respond and it's 50-50, would that be seen as adequate?
I don't think you'd be able to assess it as 50-50, because the idea is to get the qualitative data. It's not just a yes or no. It's what do people think about it? Why do they think a particular way, to help inform it? And then you'll do your draft recommendations. There's going to be a communication strategy to, get out there as much as possible to kind of push forward the questionnaire. And I imagine that it won't just come from Horsham District Council. There'll be other parties kind of lobbying on either side, encouraging residents to respond.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about what level of response we might or might not get. And
You'll have to make recommendations either way,
based
even
on
if you've
whatever
got one response.
whatever that is, we make a decision at that time. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Buffy?
I was just going to say that the situation that we're in as a council is we have a legal requirement on us to make a determination within 12 months about this request. And just to be clear that it is the competency essentially of the governance committee as part of that to make a recommendation to full council, which then full council has to vote on whether to accept or not. So I think whatever the response is or isn't, the consultation will then have to be assessed by the governance committee at that time to decide then on its basis whether the governance committee is what recommendation it wants to make based, amongst other things, on the level of response.
Yes, thank you. That would be the way I would see it. We have a legal requirement to do this. And we will make our judgment based on the responses we get, nil or otherwise. Councillor Brooks.
I was just going to say, I think Councillor Vickers succinctly summarised the advantages of a survey in that situation over a binary poll response, where if the only data we had to go on to make this decision that we're legally obliged to make is a comparatively low turnout and potentially a situation with a small margin of difference between a binary choice, that does not put us in a situation where we can feel we might have a great deal of confidence in what we are delivering for the people of Horsham. And I think that a survey, regardless of response, will be preferable to that alternative.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do you have any other comments, Councillor Vickers?
No, thank you very much for your patience with me.
You're welcome. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. As members will have noticed, I'm not from around here, so I do struggle sometimes with the areas and things, but as I understand it, the application from the bid was for the areas Den, Forest and Trafalgar. But then
Can I put you right there? It's actually blueprint.
thank you. Thank you.
Neighbourhood Forum, correct?
Sorry.
I shouldn't have specified, should I? The application is for those three areas, but yet section 8 of the terms of reference says, as well as parts of Holbrook West and Roffey South. So when I got there, I thought, oh, let's have a look at the map. And at that point, I got totally confused, I'm afraid.
You're not the only one.
It's an interesting one. Councillor Buffy, did you want to try and explain?
I think I can help a little bit there, if I can just find the appendix, because there's a map in the appendix. In fact, I know this map very well because I was one of the chairs of the neighbourhood council at the time who requested it to be put together. There's a difference between the district council wards and the neighbourhood areas which have neighbourhood councils for them. So essentially on this map that you may or may not have in front of you, you have the blue text tells you the district council ward. The colour of the areas tells you the neighbourhood, and only the bits that are coloured in are the unparished area. So I'm the councillor for Trafalgar, and much like myself, Trafalgar's really simple, because the boundaries of the neighbourhood and the ward are the same. For Den neighbourhood, you've got part of the Den ward, and you've got part of the Holbrook West ward, but not all of Holbrook West. And for, oh, welcome to my life, Councillor Vickers. And for, but not all of Den ward is in Den neighbourhood. And then you've got Forest neighbourhood, which has got bits of Forest Ward in it, and bits of Roffey South Ward in it, and bits of Den Ward in it. So the area we are talking about here is the bits that are coloured in orange, green or purple. That is the unparished area.
I can add to that. As a district councillor for Devon, I was expected to go to the North Horsham Parish Council and all 3 neighbourhood council meetings.
I'm just that sad that I actually carry a visualisation of this round in my head. People think I'm crazy because I always know which bit of town I'm in.
Thank you for that, Chair. Councillor Buffy.
Okay, do we have any other comments, any other questions? Okay, that's no. In which case, I'm going to, yes. Okay, so the committee has recommended, 1, to note that the council is required to conduct a community governance review of the unparished area of Horsham Town, having received a valid community governance application. I was going to take them all together. You want to take it separately? Okay, is there any agreement in the room to take them separately? Okay. Okay, so let's do 1 then. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. All agreed?
Agreed.
Unanimous. Item 2, to approve the terms of reference for the community governance review as set out in Appendix 1, with an amendment to the timescale for the consultation of other interested bodies to take place in May, June 2025. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brooks, all agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, so,
Chair, could I suggest you take a vote on that one?
okay, let's have a hands up vote then, please. So 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you. Item 3, to agree the consultation method for the community governance review as set out in Appendix 1, subject to full council agreeing the inclusion of a £12,000 budget for this work in the 2025-26 budget. So I'm just trying to turn the page. Right, so that's 3. So we'll vote. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Brooks, thank you. Right, hands up if you agree to this. So it's unanimous, thank you. Item 4, to note that the request for the £12,000 budget will be included in the budget papers to full council in February. All agreed? This is a note, just to note. Thank you. And 5, to delegate authority to the Democratic Services and Elections Manager to undertake all work that is required to give effect to the recommendations contained within this report. Do you want a hands up on that or all agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Vickers agreed? Okay, it's unanimous.
Just so I'm clear, I abstained on 2 because I got to recommend.
That's fine, thank you, it's noted. Okay, right, item 6, urgent business. I don't have any urgent business. Anybody else have any urgent business? No, so I declare this meeting closed.
Happy Christmas.
Yes, thank you.